So just to introduce myself, my name is Amanda, and I am the Clean Energy Program Coordinator here at Green Energy Consumers Alliance. And I am joined by my colleague Loie Hayes, who I will let quickly introduce herself.
Yeah, I'm the energy efficiency coordinator and our local heat pump expert, as it as it were.
So our agenda for today, we are going to start off with introductions, which we just did, and then we're going to get into planning ahead and how to know when it's time to replace your heating oil system. We're going to go into what are heat pumps, the cost and incentives for heat pumps, the various different design considerations for heat pumps, and then we will open it up for Q&A at the end. In case you're not familiar with Green Energy Consumers Alliance, we are an environmental nonprofit based in both Providence, Rhode Island, and Boston, Massachusetts. And our mission is to speed a just transition to a zero carbon world. And we have both programs and policies to help consumers do that. So we do a lot of educational content on heat pumps, solar, electric vehicles, things like that. And then we also have policy advocates that help advocate for climate policies in both states to really make sure that we're reducing our emissions and reaching our climate goals. And I do want to mention that this webinar is part of the Mass Save Community Education Grant. We were a recipient of that grant from Mass Save, and we're doing a lot of educational content and events to help spread the word about the Mass Save incentives. So you should learn a lot about those today. And I will pass it off to Loie.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us and for planning ahead about your next heating system replacement. Um, when you have your annual tune-up or your maintenance visit for your oil burner or your furnace, be sure to talk with the technician about what they found, what they learned about your system when they did the tune-up. Particularly, ask if they did a combustion efficiency rating or if they know the AFUE, that's again an efficiency rating for your equipment. And I've included here the metrics. Depending on which of those numbers they give you, you can see does it meet the threshold for, oh, I should really think about replacing this because of the efficiency. You can also note the age of the equipment. The technician should be able to at least estimate that if you don't know it yourself, and definitely plan to replace when your system is 15 years old or older. Sometimes even before that for furnaces, depending on what the warranty was, what the quality of the system is. Be sure that they check, and they will, the safety of the oil tank and the peripherals. Is there any rust? Is there other signs of decay? Are the peripherals, the tubes, the filters, etc., getting clogged with gunk, etc.? Uh, Again, with the chimney, is there chimney soot? Are there draft problems? And you might know yourself whether there's problems with the ductwork or the radiator or baseboard. Any of these things, problems with any of these things, indicate that you would have to make a significant investment in maintaining your oil system or your gas system if you have gas. Um, so those should be flags. If you have any of these problems, those should be flags. Oh, I should really think about replacing, and maybe not replacing with the same equipment, but with something better. And I've included a link here. When you get the slides, you'll be able to click through on these links. This is our tune-up advice handout that we have that will give you more details about this. So the other reason that a lot of people are considering switching to heat pumps is because of the environmental impacts, the global warming, climate change uh, problem that we have. And heat pumps really are the most efficient solution to the greenhouse gas contribution from our heating systems. This is a Mass Clean Energy Center graph, and it shows the greenhouse gas emissions from various heating sources. You see oil is here, and it's virtually as dirty as electric baseboard. Electric baseboard is dirty primarily because it's not very efficient. Um, Propane, natural gas also contributing greenhouse gases. And there are some emissions associated with these electric sources, air source heat pumps and ground source heat pumps, but it's much less. And this is with the current electric grid or the current electric grid as of 2021, I believe, was the latest data that they had. And as we move to a 100% clean grid, which we are mandated to by law now, you'll see there are zero emissions from the heat pumps at that point. There's zero emissions from electric baseboard as well, but you would have to be using a whole lot more electricity to heat with electric baseboard. And of course, still emissions from the fossil fuels. So um, that's why so many of us are thinking about heat pumps and choosing heat pumps. And that's why the state is offering significant rebates, the state and the federal government, significant rebates for switching to heat pumps. So let's just do some basic fundamentals on heat pumps so we're all on the same page. A heat pump is essentially the same technology as in your air conditioner or refrigerator, except that it can run in reverse. So here's an illustration of an air source ductless mini split. Those words all mean basically the same thing. It's just a type of heat pump. And there's a head, inside your house, that just circulates air from the room past these refrigerant lines. And in winter, that refrigerant line coming into your house is hot. It's been heated up because heat has been extracted from the air and compressed. That refrigerant has been compressed so that it's super hot, and it comes in, and your room temperature air is blowing against that, and the heat is released into your room. And the reverse happens in the summer. This is then cool refrigerant. The air temperature is being blown against that cool refrigerant. Heat and moisture are being extracted and being funneled outside. So that's the basics of how a heat pump works. There's no air exchange between inside and outside. It's just the refrigerant line that comes inside and outside. What does it look like on the inside? Well, here are some ductless indoor units. The wall hung unit is the most common, least expensive. It circulates the air nicely because there's nothing blocking the airflow up here. And it's fine for heat to be up above because again, that it's a very gentle heat, it's a very gradual circulation, and it's a nice churn here. There are also floor-mounted units. These are particularly good on the first floor of buildings, and the refrigerant line to these can be brought in through the basement if that's accessible, so that you can actually have these on interior walls. The wall hung units have to be on exterior walls because of the condensate drain. It has to go more or less straight down to keep that water flowing, that moisture flowing out of the unit. But with a floor mounted unit, you can have the condensate drain go down into the basement. And then there are ceiling units as well. These are a little more expensive because there's some carpentry that's involved with getting in there, and obviously you need to have space, usually above, to do that carpentry work. Occasionally, you can get a rectangular unit that comes in from below, where the carpentry work is done from below, but that's even more rare. What do the outdoor units look like? This is an air source unit. Um, Basically, it's like a large suitcase, or in some cases, a very large suitcase, depending on the amount of heat that's being produced. There's a stand because you need to be up off the ground in the winter. You don't want snow and ice to build up and block that fan. You don't want to put it right underneath an overhang where icicles or something could crash down and crush the machinery. And then there's obviously an electrical connection to make the whole thing work. And there's the refrigerant line, which goes against the side of your house and it's hidden by a little vinyl line hide that can be matched to the color of your house. Now, this is an illustration of a ground source or geothermal system where outside the home in the ground is buried a loop. It can be either a horizontal loop like this or a vertical loop, almost like a well. Then the refrigerant is brought into your heat pump in the basement, and the heat is then distributed via air or water. What does it cost? That's a big question. The I've got some figures here taken from the Mass Save website. They have a great little comparison tool, heating cost comparison tool that you can use, and it will tell you that in this case a new oil boiler might be $9,000 to $11,000. Remember, there are no incentives except through the low income program. If you're qualified for fuel assistance, then there are still incentives, but otherwise there are no incentives. And a lot of people come to this decision when they need to make a tank replacement. The tank replacement itself can be 3,500, and then if you need to also replace your boiler or your furnace at that time, that's an additional cost, obviously. A new gas boiler, again, more or less the same range, 10,900 to 13,400. No incentives except for the low income program. And the ductless air source heat pump is 10,300 to 14,300. And yes, there are incentives that would lower this. You may need to upgrade your electrical service. An illustration here of a panel. You want a 200 amp service most likely. Um, Again, there's some variation on that, and there are incentives for upgrading that electrical. Typically, the cost of the electrical upgrade would be 2,500 to 4,500 per unit. If you had a multifamily, it'd be more obviously. So that's just these are all very ballpark numbers. You need a technician to come to your house and actually give you quotes to figure out what your cost would be for your home. Here's a little screenshot from the Mass Save Heating Cost Calculator. You put in your current system information. In this case, I put in oil. And it will show you this is the one for one. I have an oil tank. I'm gonna put in another oil boiler, and this is going to be the cost. It shows you what the available Mass Save incentive is. And your post incentive cost. So in this case, it will show you also many options for heat pumps um, and what the net cost will be for that. So in this case of a ductless air source heat pump, with that cost range that I told you, there could be a $10,000 incentive, which would bring your net cost after incentives down to 600 to 4,300. Obviously, a lot less than the cost of a new oil boiler. This also doesn't show the federal tax credit, which is up to $2,000. Note on the geothermal that that federal tax credit is even greater. It's 30%, but there's no cap. So it could be a $10,000 tax credit, depending on the cost of the geothermal. And you can roll over what you don't use in year one, you can use in year two, etc. And I've included a link to this so that when you get the slides, you can click through and see it yourself. Now, the big question with heat pumps is the operating cost. Will this save me money in the winter when I'm paying the bills? And to answer this question, I'm sharing a DOER, Mass Department of Energy Resources slide graph. This is based on the actual heating costs for this last winter. And you can see what numbers they're using to estimate these various heating types. And your numbers will vary because this is an average, it's a statewide average of all utilities, all suppliers, etc. And the gray bar shows this number, this 33 cents per kilowatt versus this 343 per gallon number. And using those numbers, you see that oil is virtually the same, but maybe slightly less than a heat pump. And that's what we found. This past winter, a lot of people with oil heat would actually be paying less with oil than they would with the electric, but it's very close. And these skinny bars that are darker color show the range uh, of data that the state considered. So there's a greater range in the cost of electricity. And particularly if you have your own solar, if you live in a municipal light area with a lower rate, or if your town's municipal aggregation rate is lower, then lots of people this winter were saving considerably more than those who were heating with oil or even gas, and certainly propane or electric resistance. So it is very important to look at what these numbers are. And then, of course, what we're trying to do is project 10 years worth of those numbers into the future, and no one knows what those numbers will be. In general, we see, more pressure, more regulatory pressure on the fossil fuels, and we're seeing more renewables come online at a relatively lower rate for electricity generation. So, but those numbers are anyone's projections. Now, one thing that's good that just happened this year is a seasonal heat pump rate, which is lower than the regular electric rate. This is already in place in Unitil territory. It is 6 cents less if you have a heat pump than if you don't have a heat pump for the whole 6 months of the winter season, and that applies to your whole electric bill. So 6 cents less, and calculating a heat pump user home is using 1,700 kilowatts per month. The savings for those people in Unitil territory we estimate to be $612 this past heating season for that 6 months. Um, Now, National Grid and Eversource, I know most of us are Eversource customers today. National Grid and Eversource are working on creating a proposal for a heat pump discounted electric rate for those 6 winter months. They're not yet published, but we believe that they will roll out in time for this winter's heating season. So that's really great. How much they're going to be, we don't know exactly. You could perhaps use this 6 cents discount for estimating purposes if you're creating a spreadsheet for this purpose. Now, if you really want to geek out, there is a good article on the Energy Sage website, and I have a link to it here, that will help you think more about what would my operating costs be for a heat pump. So I recommend that. Now let's go into the incentives. Um, just to start with an overview, there are the federal incentives, tax credits, and Inflation Reduction Act rebates. There's the state and utility rebates, Mass Save, Clean Heat Rhode Island, Rhode Island Energy, municipal light and power plants. There are some municipal programs, for instance, Boston has a Boston Homeworks Green Loan program. There are other loan programs, such as the Mass Heat Loan Program. This is interest-free loan. It's capped at 25,000, 3 to 7 year term. That term is determined by your income level, but there is no income cap. Everyone can get a Mass Save Heat loan if you qualify according to the bank's loan standards. There is also now a new program that I want to really recommend to people, the Mass Energy Saver Home Loan Program. And this is for low and moderate income households, but it's up to 135% of area median income. And in the Boston area, that's 191,000. So it's a pretty generous low and moderate income definition. It is for up to $10,000 and it's for 2% or less, and it's a 20-year term. So that is a great product if you need to make significant energy upgrades to your home. Diving into the federal tax credit, these are the 25C and 25D forms that you would be filling out. So the 25C is for things like heat pumps and heat pump water heaters, electrical upgrades, windows, doors, things of that type. And it's a max of $3,200 per year, but it's a mix and match of different things. For instance, there's a $2,000 cap on heat pumps and heat pump water heaters. That's your post incentive cost, 30% of that post incentive cost, up to $2,000. There are smaller credits for other things, like $600 for if you do an electrical upgrade for installing a heat pump or a heat pump water heater. There is no rollover, so if your 30% was greater than 2000, you can't take that remainder the next year. But you can do a new thing each year and claim a new energy saving tax credit every year. So you can do heat pumps year one, you can do heat pump water heater year two, you can do new windows year three, etc. Now, there is also the 25D, which covers your geothermal heat pump installations, batteries, solar, things like that. And that is a 30% post incentive tax credit, but there's no cap. So if your 30% was $3,000, you could take $3,000, or $10,000, you could take 10,000, and it can roll over. So if you don't use all of that tax credit in the first year, you can apply the remainder to the next year, etc. And there are a couple links here to help you with that. Federal rebates. So these are the IRA rebates. They are federally funded, but they're administered by the states. And in Massachusetts, we think that they're going to be announced in June or July of this year. There are two types. One has the acronym HERE, and that is based on measures, and it is up to 150% of area median income. This is going to be administered through the municipal light plants and through DOER's affordable housing program. So you have to be in one of those groups in order to benefit from this. The Home Efficiency Rebate Program, or HER, is based on projected energy savings, and this will be administered through the CAP agencies. Again, if you qualify for fuel assistance, this is something that could potentially benefit you. Or if you qualify for Mass Save's Moderate Income Program, and there are income worksheets that you can fill out on the Mass Save website to figure out if you're part of that moderate income cohort that they're looking for. It's up to 80% of area median income. And there are a couple uh, links here for that information. And of course, we don't know exactly what the federal government is going to do about releasing the funds for these. So that's the big elephant in the room. There are similar programs in Rhode Island as well that we can tell you more about if you want to follow up on those. And we have links that you can follow to get more information. Rhode Island, there are some things that have been paused and then restarted. So do follow up with us if you're looking to take advantage of these in Rhode Island. In Massachusetts, of course, the incentives vary depending on the household income and the zip code. So here's an example of a two-person household in Cambridge with three different income levels. So the income, excuse me, for this two-person household is less than this 59,000 number. ABCD, the fuel assistance agency, would completely cover the cost of a heat pump installation. If you're moderate income, and in Cambridge, for a two-person household, this is defined as roughly 60,000 to 104,000, you would qualify for the enhanced incentive of 16,000 per apartment or home. And I know one Mass Energy oil heat member who did qualify this for a two-family house. So they got 16,000 per home off the cost of their heat pump installation, and it really was the deciding factor for them. There's a pilot program in Plymouth and Brockton and Springfield that also covers 100% of the cost for moderate income households. And then the market rate for this two-family household in Cambridge is defined as 104,000 plus, and that is up to $10,000 per apartment or home. It's measured by heating capacity, tons of heating capacity, and it's $3,000 per ton. The average home might need 3 or 4,000 tons for the whole home. So as of this year, there is a new mass enhanced incentive for equity communities. And this is communities, this is the list of communities. It's where more than 50% of a building is occupied by tenants. 100% of the cost of weatherization is borne by the Mass Save program. There are enhanced electrification offers, turnkey services, expanded outreach, and language support. So this is a great advancement for people who've traditionally been left out of the Mass Save program. We're pleased to see this. Now, this is the market rate incentive for people who don't qualify for the low income program or the moderate income program. And you see here, this is broken into tiers. This is starting with just a basic, if you were putting in a heat pump that was primarily designed for cooling, there would be a small incentive. And then if you're doing partial home, you'd get 1,200 per ton. And then if you go to a full home system, you would get $3,000 per ton, up to 10,000. And here you see that enhanced for moderate income is 16,000. And you notice that each year this declines slightly. The Mass Save program works in 3-year tranches, so we're starting the new 3-year plan, and the incentive drops $1,000. The cap on that incentive drops $1,000 per year for the next 3 years, although for the moderate income it stays steady. Then there is a geothermal or ground source heat pump incentive, and also even a partial ground source incentive. Now, I do want to mention water heaters because if you have an oil system, oftentimes your hot water is connected to your oil system. And if you replace the oil heat, you also need to replace your water heating capacity. And there are heat pump water heaters. A lot of these are tanked, a tank, and it might be called a hybrid, or it might be 100% heat pump. Hybrid just means that there's an electric element in here that can boost it if the temperature is very cold. It uses the electric element to boost it. There's a $750 instant rebate through your contractor, or if you're purchasing from Lowe's or Home Depot, that's a $600 rebate in Rhode Island. These are more efficient than any other tank equipment, 2 to 3 times more efficient in terms of how it uses the energy. It does need adequate space for air exchange, usually a full basement, not a garage, not a utility closet. It does need usually a 240 volt circuit. It's a dedicated circuit. There are plug-in units, but they're not really being installed in the Northeast yet. They're designed for warmer, more mild temperatures. It does need a condensate drain because, again, as it pulls heat out of the air, there is moisture that condenses in that colder air. And it does make the space both cooler and drier. So if you have a heated basement or a basement where you have a workshop that's just heated by excess heat from your boiler or your furnace, that could be a problem. If you are concerned about that space being cooler, there are split system heat pump water heaters, and this is where the tank is separate from the heat pump. You can see this black area here is the heat pump, and this is your tank. In the split systems, it's a tank, and then the condenser is outside of your basement. So heat is being extracted from the outside, not from your basement. And the condensate is not an issue because it's outdoors. Um, Now, there is a larger incentive for the split system heat pump water heaters through Mass Save because it tends to be a little more expensive, the equipment. But there are also solar assisted split system heat pump water heaters. That's a mouthful. But there is a 30% federal tax credit with no cap. So again, you could take a larger tax credit. Efficiency Maine has a great website for calculating the comparison of different water heating equipment. So I recommend that as well. The Energy Star has good equipment listings as well, and you can sort that by split system, for instance. So let's talk about design options. Here you see a condenser that is shielded by this overhang, so that's really nice. Keeps it from getting, piled up with snow, etc. Um, so think about your home and think, does it have ductwork or not? Grates in the floor for hot air to come up, and return ducts for makeup air for the furnace. If you have a furnace instead of a boiler, that hot air ductwork it could easily be repurposed for a heat pump system. You just need to make sure that there's not going to be condensate in the ductwork, and if the ductwork is in good condition, etc. You do need an HVAC technician to really take a look at that and make sure. Um, if you have central air conditioning, it's also possible that that central air conditioning ductwork could be used for the heat pump. It's a little trickier because hot air takes more space than cold air does, so your ductwork may be too small for heating. But and again, there's the question of the condensate. But it's really great if you can replace, obviously two pieces of equipment, your central AC and your furnace, with just one, the heat pump. Your equipment costs are going to be less, as well as your maintenance costs. Now, if your home does not have ductwork, you have a boiler. You have radiators, or you have hot water baseboard or steam baseboard. Well, steam radiators or hot water radiators. Um, at present, generally, most heat pumps do not produce hot enough water to easily replace boilers. Now, if you've added a lot of insulation to your home, uh, you may be able to find equipment that's going to be adequate. Um, there are more and more hydronic options becoming available every year, so don't give up on that idea. But for most people with what we call hydronic heat, hot water or steam, you're going to be looking at a ductless or mini ducted heat pump system if you want to switch to heat pumps. Again, you can have a single head serving a large open area. You can have single zones or multi zones. A mini ducted head could sit in the attic above, say, three adjacent small rooms on the third floor and serve each of those rooms. Um, and you always want to insulate first because that's going to make a difference in terms of the cost of the equipment, the size of the equipment that you're buying. Sizing the equipment is one of the places where we found consumers have the most trouble working with contractors and getting a good, reputable quote from a contractor. So I'm going to show you a few slides about sizing the equipment. Now, in this illustration, we have a simple two-bedroom home, and we're positing that it needs 24,000 BTUs per hour to keep this house comfortable in the winter. And in this illustration, we're using basically the wood stove analogy where you have your heat pump head in this large common area, and it's keeping all of this common area nice and toasty in winter, and these two back bedrooms are cooler. And this may be just fine for the hardy New Englanders among us, but it may be that you want to do this and have a partial displacement of your fossil heat, meaning you're keeping your heating system, you're setting the thermostat back here, and you're using that to keep these bedrooms from getting too cold in the winter. Um, Obviously, in summer, these bedrooms would be warmer than this area, which would be nice and cool. And you might want to put a ceiling fan in these two rooms, and that might be, the perfect answer. What we want to warn you against is too many heads in too small a space. Now, in this case, a contractor has said, I'm going to put a 9,000 BTU head in four spaces, one in each bedroom and two in this open area. It's going to be more BTUs than you need. It's going to produce 36,000 BTUs, 30% more than what you need. And this too much equipment is going to result in both energy issues, too much energy being used, and performance issues. It's not giving you the warmth and the cool that you want. Um, Heat pump systems are designed to run continuously at a steady state, and that's when they're most efficient. If they're cycling on and off, they're going to be inefficient. And with these small bedrooms and 9,000 BTUs, it's going to get hot and then it's going to need to shut down to allow the heat to dissipate. And that on off cycling, and ditto in the summer, is going to get cold and it's going to shut off. And that's particularly problematic in terms of comfort because the dehumidification takes longer than the cooling. Two separate functions in the same machine, but the dehumidification takes longer. And so the cooling is going to happen, it's going to shut off, and the dehumidification is not going to happen. It's not going to be successful. So do not buy more BTUs than you understand that you need. And the way you understand that you need it is by asking the contractor to estimate each room how many BTUs are needed to keep that warm in the winter. This could be the perfect solution for you, a mini ducted unit. We've got an air handler that sits in the attic above these bedrooms. It could even sit in the basement and have two small runs coming up to floor registers. And that way you've got 12,000 BTUs divided between the two of them, so they're each only getting 6,000, and they're perfectly comfortable summer and winter. And you've got 12,000 in the open area, and that's getting you perfectly condensed comfortable as well. These could be connected to one condenser or two. If you connect them to two condensers, it tends to be even more efficient than just one. But obviously, there's some greater expense in the equipment. Um, the condenser can be up to 150 feet from the unit, so you've got some pretty good latitude. And how to proceed. First, if you haven't had a home energy assessment from MassSave in the last 2 years, you want to request that when you're thinking about getting quotes for systems. Um, you need this to qualify for incentives. They need to know what equipment you would be replacing in order to calculate what your savings would be, and thus why it's a good thing for MassSave to subsidize. Excuse me. You definitely want to do any additional insulation and air sealing that they recommend. You also want to research the incentives and loan programs that apply to you. I've got links to two great um, incentive finders for each state and the various loan programs. And then we do recommend asking Energy Sage for a solar assessment if you have any, sunny roof space that you think might work for solar, because um, Solar really brings down the cost of your electricity. And if you could install solar, then that makes your operating cost for the heat pump much lower. And then you can actually estimate what the whole 10 years would be because it would be based on that upfront cost with the solar, not on a per year changing electric rate. You can also get an assessment for you can get a quote for community solar, even if you don't have a sunny roof. Community solar will often give you a discount on your kilowatt charge. We do encourage you to get multiple perspectives. Do not talk to just one contractor. You want to talk with multiple contractors, and luckily in both Rhode Island and Massachusetts, you can get no cost virtual independent consultations with the Mass Save program. Oftentimes with municipal power companies, they provide those as well. Energy Sage provides that as well. Energy Sage can also provide you with quotes and independent advice on those quotes, and Clean Heat Rhode Island as well. You can research installers via the Mass Save site, and also the Energy Saver Home Loan Program that I mentioned has a contractors list. You can cross-reference these and find the contractors with the highest level of experience. Once you've started to narrow down your contractor list, look at their websites, see what they say about heat pumps, if they say what type of manufacturers, what type of equipment they supply, then go to the manufacturer's website and see what the rating is for that, for those contractors. You can get a lot of information before you even talk with a contractor. Be sure to get 3 quotes. There are many ways to skin a cat with heat pumps, many different design options. You want to be sure you've gotten a diversity of perspectives on your heating needs. And then, of course, start at our website if you want more basic information and lots of links to information and FAQs and things like that. So 3 questions that we suggest that you ask installers explicitly is your company approved for my state or municipal heat pump rebate program? And note that in the near future, we expect that Massive will create a higher tier of qualifications for their heat pump installer network. So you'll be able to choose, oh, I really want to go with the top of the line installers, the people who have the most experience. Um, is your the equipment that you're recommending eligible for the cold climate heat pump state and municipal rebates? And you can also, using that IRS link that I shared on the earlier slides, that you'll see, you can find is it eligible for the federal tax credit as well. So you want to make sure and not assume that the equipment will be eligible for a rebate, and then find out when you submit the application that, oh, you missed it by 1%. It had to be 93%, and yours was only 92%. I'm making up numbers, but you want to make sure of that. And ask them if they formally calculate your heat load before you sign a contract to purchase specific pieces of equipment. The heat load is that calculation that I mentioned where they're actually measuring how much heat is necessary to keep a particular space comfortable on a winter's night. And that's a measure of BTUs. And ideally, you'll find a contractor who will calculate your heat load by room and then correlate that to the size of the equipment that they're selling. Now, a lot of contractors will estimate that heat load, and you might feel comfortable about that, but I would talk with them. What is the basis of your estimate, and why do you think it's that, and not 500 more BTUs or 500 less BTUs, etc., or 1,000? Ask them for their reasoning and compare the 3 different contractors. What heat loads did they estimate? By the way, the the Energy Saver Home Loan Program has a fabulous element, and that is that they will calculate your heat load by room and they will share that with you. So if you go through that program, you can then share that heat load calculation with all the other contractors and tell them, I want equipment that meets the needs of this heat load. Just in closing, we want to say that we have lots of events like this, and there are many coming up. All sorts of wonderful things in the offing. And we are a nonprofit. We welcome your donations to support our programs and our advocacy work. And we are conducting a survey of our program participants to find out who is in the room with us and how can we reach the broadest possible number of people and demographic types of people in our region. So we encourage you to fill out this survey, and you'll get a chance to win one of five $50 gift cards if you do complete the survey. So thank you for your participation in that. And here is my contact information, and I'll have Amanda take over leading the question and answer session.
Great. Thanks so much, Loie. We got a lot of great questions throughout the presentation, some of which I think you answered during the presentation, but we can definitely reiterate some answers. Just a reminder, if you do have questions, please enter them into the Q&A chat. That is what we will be using to answer questions today. So, going to our questions we have so far, someone asked, they said that their oil burner heats the whole house, and they're asking if a ductless air source heat pump would only heat a small area. I think that depends on their system design and setup, right, Loie?
Exactly. Yep. You can choose to completely replace that oil burner, or you could say we're going to use that oil burner only between 30 degrees and, negative 30, whatever it is. But we're going to use the heat pump for every time above 30 degrees. Or you can say, the oil burner is great and it's going to be our major heat, but we're going to recognize that, say, the great room needs more heat, or some space needs more heat, and we're going to put a ductless mini split in that space. Or you could say it needs more air conditioning, and we're going to use a ductless air source heat pump primarily for air conditioning, but we know we'll be able to use it, say, in September and October when we just need a little bit of heat. Um, but again, down to, um, you know, 50 degrees or 40 degrees or whatever it is. So there are many varieties you can choose.
Great. Thanks for that answer, Loie. We also have a question about what are the additional costs to replace a tankless hot water system, which often comes along with oil heating?
Buy a tankless. Because you're saying it comes along with oil heating, I'm assuming what you mean is what we call an indirect hot water system, where you have your boiler and you have a pipe going from the boiler to a water tank, and there's a constant flow there where you're basically getting free hot water during the winter from your oil burner because your burner's firing all the time and it's just sharing that heat with the water tank. That indirect system is one of the most efficient. And if you are going to replace your oil burner, you can actually keep it uh, as the hot water system if you want to do that, if it's still functioning, etc. Um, you can disconnect the thermostat to the boiler, but still have basically a thermostat on the hot water tank that fires it up for that purpose. It's not a common choice, but you can do that. Generally speaking, you want to replace that, both the boiler and the tank next to it, with a heat pump for your space heating and a heat pump for your water heating. It would no longer be integrated.
Great. And will heat pumps restart automatically after an electricity outage?
Good question. I don't know the answer to that. I'm assuming that they would, but and I'm pretty sure that mine did. I lived with a heat pump for more than 10 years and never remember it being a problem. So I'm sure it does. Yeah.
Awesome. And do these incentives and loans apply to new construction ADUs being added to an old house?
Um, that's a good question. I'm pretty sure that these apply to both ADUs and new construction. I'm more confident on the ADUs than the new construction, but Mass Save has a separate program called Major Renovations and New Construction, and it's possible that there's a different um, incentive structure for those. So check the Mass Save website, search for major renovations and new construction, and you'll be able to get the information there. It would be under residential and then new construction and major renovations.
Great. We're also getting some questions about where people can go to get the home energy assessment. That is through Mass Save, correct?
Well, you can either call Mass Save directly, or you can go to one of the contractors listed on the Mass Save website. So if use Find a Contractor on the Mass Save website, you'll see three categories of contractors that they have certified. One is the insulation. You don't want to use those people. One is the heat pump. And what you want to do is the home performance contractors, HPC. That's the type of contractor uh, who are paid by Mass Save to come to your home to do what is to you a free home visit to do the assessment. And they're the people who take down all the data that's necessary for Mass Save to be able to calculate which incentives you would qualify for.
Great.
And that's often a little quicker process, calling the home performance contractor themselves. You do need to be aware that they oftentimes have other services and they may try to upsell you on their services. But if they recommend insulation, that cost, the insulation and sealing cost, is fixed by, controlled by Mass Save. So you can call any home performance contractor and get the same cost and generally the same quality of insulation and air sealing.
Great. And if someone has a partial heat pump on the second floor, but then they still have their gas furnace heating their first floor, would they qualify for a rebate if they decided to replace their gas furnace with a heat pump?
I believe you would. It would be under the partial program, though, under the partial tier, not the whole home tier, I believe.
And we're getting a few specific design questions. Looks like someone has two bedrooms that are right on top of each other on the first and second floor. And they're asking if the one condenser can feed both of those rooms.
Definitely, no
Great.
problem. And each would have their own thermostat, but they would both be, firing up the condenser when they needed to draw energy.
Great. Another person is saying that they have hot water heat from an oil system and no basement. Since they don't have a space for a water heater, would the whole home heat pump system make sense for them?
Interesting question. Yes, definitely you can do that. You might want to use a split um, heat pump water heater in that instance, where your tank could be in a small space, but your condenser would be outside, and that would solve that problem.
Great. Let's see. It looks like someone got a quote from one vendor who performed an assessment, but they would like to go through a different vendor. um, they're not getting a response from the vendor that did the assessment, do they need to get a new assessment in order to install a heat pump?
No, no, that original assessment, if you're talking about a home energy assessment, that supplies Mass Save with the data. Uh, that's kind of your base setting for the Mass Save program to be able to calculate your rebates, and you can get quotes, heat pump quotes from any other Mass Save approved vendor. It does have to be one, they do have to be listed on that heat pump installer network list. Um, in order to have you qualify for the rebate. But yeah, you can get quotes from anybody, and you don't need to get a new assessment from each heat pump vendor. It just need the assessment is done once.
Great. Um, I think this is more of a design question. Someone is asking, how do you handle if you want to close your door, but the heat pump is outside in the main room? I think the answer would be you would want to design the system so that you would also have a head in your bedroom so that you could still get heat through that and close your door and have another head in the main living area, right?
Generally speaking, if your sole source of heat is a heat pump, then every room where you generally will be closing the door will have its own head or will have a duct connecting it to a shared head. So that bedroom situation perhaps could just be have a mini duct um, from a shared uh, head, a shared air handler. Um, but generally speaking, yeah, each room that where the door is closed um, needs its own head. Now that said, there are plenty of places that have small bedrooms. Like in my house, there's a small bedroom on the second floor that's above an entryway where there's no heat, and it's the tail end of a hydronic baseboard. So the water in that baseboard is not very hot by the time it gets around to that small bedroom that's on a corner that's above an unheated space. So that small bedroom is always cold, and we just don't worry about it. There's no water running through those walls. We have extra quilts for the bed that's in there, and you know, if we were to switch to heat pumps, would we put a heat pump in there? I'm not so sure we would. You know, um, it depends on, I guess, how hot you want the room to be in winter.
That
It
makes
is a
sense.
little chilly to get out of the bed in that room in the morning in winter, but that's what bathrooms are for.
Great. All right. Well, we are 2 minutes over, so I think we will end there, but really appreciate all the great questions. And like I said in the beginning, be on the lookout for a follow-up email with the slides and the recording.
Yeah, and feel free to send me an email if you have more questions, but definitely do check out our website. And thanks so much for doing the survey. If you haven't had time yet to do the survey, you can take a picture of this QR code and fill it out if you would like to do that. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thanks. Take care.
Bye bye.